Ayesha Curry, she was on a podcast recently, and she was going through her speech about how Steph was not her type.
Your type in high school is not somebody who may be your type when you're 40.
On one hand, it's a story of hope. On the other hand, it's a poison pill.
What I hear is just unsettledness.
She does have a legit origin story.
Men are always saying choose better. Well, maybe choosing better means not choosing what's traditionally my type.
It is low-key disrespectful because she didn't cover him.
Ayesha Curry of Steph Curry fame, who was also of Golden State Warrior fame. She was on a podcast recently, and she was going through her speech about how Steph was not her type. And this is a part of many women's origin stories, like Batman's origin story, Spider-Man. He was not my type, and I gave him a chance, and here we are. That they did have to go through that. You're like, you know what? He wasn't my type, but now, he grew on me. So I'm really curious as to why do women have to include that in their origin story, that he grew on me. He wasn't my type. Yeah, I don't know if that validates the beginning of the relationship, but I've seen this happen for a lot of different women in media and in my own personal life. So I'm wanting to know, ladies or even gentlemen, why do you guys think this is always included in how a relationship came about? The women having the tendency to do this. What do you guys think?
Well, as the only woman on the panel, let me go ahead and jump in on that one. So first, I want to answer the question. I think it's because when someone starts with "they're not my type," so first, in Ayesha Curry case, she stated that she's known him since they were young, and so your type in high school is not somebody who may be your type when you're 40. And so for her to say he was not my type is because in high school, he probably wasn't, just like in a lot of women origin stories, that person probably wasn't their type. But I think this shows growth and evolvement for recognizing that, hey, he may not be my type, but maybe he could be. Or maybe I should give him a chance because maybe my type, because men always saying choose better for those who are out of high school but grown now. Men are always saying choose better. Well, maybe choosing better means not choosing what's traditionally my type. Maybe choosing better means let me step outside my comfort zone and go with a brother who I would have never looked at in the first place, And so I think when they include that in the origin story is to say, hey, I gave him a chance because he wasn't what I was used to. And like I said, in her case, I think she should get it's so hard for me with her because after hearing some of the other things that she said, I was like, Lord have mercy. She out here embarrassing this man. But then I realized once again, she was talking about in high school that wasn't the type. I actually think it shows some growth and evolvement on her part that she got with him, regardless of him being her type. I don't think women need to include that in their origin story, but they may feel like it might be something romantic, like, oh, he wasn't my type, but I just gave him a chance. And look where we are 20 years later, 30 years later, 6 years later, whatever the case may be. Look where we are, because they're trying to encourage other women to say, hey, give somebody who's not your type a chance.
There is a pattern of women who pick a guy who's not their type. On one hand, it's a story of hope, of romance, right? It's the guy gets the girl after all. On the other hand, it's a poison pill, right? Because it has guys chasing women who really aren't interested in them, thinking they're going to convince this woman that you are her type. No, you're not going to do it, bro. If she don't like you from jump, she's probably not going to like you 30 days from now. She is going to realize what you're useful for and realize how to get in them pockets. You know what I'm saying? So she might keep you around. But if she wasn't feeling you at first, it's not very often that they start to feel you later. Now, I will say, sometimes not my type. I think S&M alluded to this, looks kind of like I wouldn't normally date this guy, but I'm going to try something different. That's a different story, but understand that still means that there was an attraction at first, right? You didn't have to convince her you were worth a shot, right? Because dudes don't really glow up. We are who we are. If a man has a glow up, it's because his pay went up and now he can afford better. It's a poison pill for the purpose of suggesting to men they should chase women that aren't really interested, which I think is a bad idea. And because it does kind of hit a man's ego, but not because of the reason people think. I think people think it's because it's like he wasn't good enough at first. It was this and this and that. I think it's a low-key dig to say, I made this man. Because she's still with him, right? So does that mean she shaped him into the thing that she wanted? You know what I'm saying? Does it mean that somehow he wasn't good enough when she got there? I think it deserves further clarification. If a woman's going to say he wasn't my type, she needs to follow up and say, you know what? He wasn't what I wanted, but he was what I needed, right? that clarifies. Leaving it out there like she did is low-key disrespectful because she didn't cover him. Not that it's her job to be a covering, but if you're going to open your mouth, please say something to edify your man. Go ahead. Who talking?
Woo! Oh man, I had to drink something. I had to gulp down before I started talking about talk real quick because I don't know. Oh, okay. So first I want to start off by saying this. I had to do some research and I went back to the clip where she was talking. I think it was the Red Table Talk. And this was the clip where, a lot of people was not feeling her because she was talking about how she wasn't getting attention from men and people thought that was, kind of fucked up. It was not that great, which is kind of what put her in the crosshairs, right? And I went back and looked at that clip and she had gained some weight, right? Like if you go back and look at that clip compared to how she looks now, I think she's probably like about 30 to 40 pounds heavier in that clip. The reason why I bring that up is because I do understand, like maybe in that moment she was having some insecurities. She might have been saying, "Hey, I don't feel attractive. My guy, he's been that guy or whatever." But me over here, you know what? I'm just mom. I'm just me. I'm just fat. And so I gave her grace. I did that for this story, going back to do some research, and I was like, "Oh, wait a minute!" And I noticed that, and I was like, "Wow." So for me, I think I've got a different view on her now. I think I understand. Like for her, she was the it girl growing up, right? She was probably one of the cuter girls. She probably was like a cheerleader or whatever. And so in her station, she probably thought she was going to take over the world, right? And she probably looked at Steph like Steph probably deserved to be looked at the time. Yeah, he played basketball, but there's nothing that was really swaggy about Steph for real, for real. When he came out to the league, it was like, yo, Steph, you could be a good shooter, whatever, whatever. But people didn't really see this for Steph, if we're going to be honest, right? Like he'd be a pretty decent NBA player, maybe his brother, but they didn't see this. So in the lens from her perspective, I think she even mentioned he thought that he was going to be a high school coach, right? Like what's the chances of that still happening, right? But maybe for him, he went to Davidson, which wasn't like the biggest school in the world. So it wasn't like the path was paved for him to become one of the greatest shooters of all time and the icon that he's become, how he's revolutionized the game. So I think for her, it's reasonable that she saw herself as being that it girl. And at some point in time, it shifted. You know what I'm saying? Like her itness could only go but so far. And she had to eventually acquiesce to the fact that the little high school basketball coach that she eventually got with became that nigga. Right. And I think it's more about her. It's not so much about Steph. It does feel a little competitive-y a little bit. It feels a little jealousy a little bit. I get that or whatever. But I think oftentimes women find themselves in these relationships, especially with men who can be just so iconic, right? And be in the shadow of that. And it's difficult for them to reconcile that with what they consider the sacrifices that they made in order to be with that man and for that man to be who he is now too, right? Because part of the reason why we love Steph, at least for me, is he's married, got a beautiful wife and kids, right? But the wife and kids has to be the wife holds that down. And maybe for her, what I hear is just unsettledness in regards to where she feels like she is for herself. It doesn't mean she's left him. It doesn't mean she loves him any less, right? I just think it means that she is just not the greatest orator, or in terms of trying to share her story, she's a little clumsy with it. And so she gets ate up a lot. And some of the clips that we see are probably unfair too, to a certain extent. But if you listen past the sound bites, I think it's legit that she's kind of talking more about herself in terms of feeling like, okay, what else can I do? And that's legit if you have plans and hopes and you just happen to marry the dude. And I agree with S&M that people do change. Like the Steph that he was in high school, the Nick that I was in high school was not the same Nick in college, and certainly was not the same Nick after college, right? So people do change and you get a little swag about you and you realize this was the love of your life the entire time. And you have a cute little origin story about how you didn't recognize Fred Sandwich during your wonder years, right? And the last thing I'll say too is this on Steph's part is that Steph might actually be like a real life Steph to Stephon, if you think about it, right? Because I think we all could look at him, scrawny, little dude, you know what I'm saying, a little light-skinned dude, probably looks soft a little bit. You ain't thinking he's finna be the killer that he became, right? But at some point in time, that boy became Stephon, right? And even Laura recognized what time it was. She wasn't feeling Steven when he was Kellen, but she was down with the Urkel, and it's possible that this was like a real life Steven and Stephon and Laura story. And if that's the case, man, I love that for them. So I'm gonna give Ayesha a little bit more grace because I feel charitable. You dig what I'm saying? Like she apparently did by getting with Steph in the first place. At least is that what she said? But go ahead.
Yeah, that's a fact. And I did a little digging on her too, and apparently she had aspirations of being an actress. So once I read that, I was like, okay, now a lot of this is making a little more sense. She had dreams, she went off to Hollywood, didn't work out, but Steph blew up and he became kind of the main character in their relationship. So that can probably do a little something to you, especially if you had dreams of really being a public figure, being famous and being noteworthy, because main reason we know who she is because of him. She does have a legit origin story and a glow up. And I think going from high school to now and still being with the same man is awesome. And it's a beautiful thing. And unlike a lot of women, all her kids have the same last name. So kudos to her for that. That's a big deal. And I think there's something to learn from her that the ladies can do to say, you know what? The regular D-boys, the scammers, the SoundCloud rappers, that's not working out for me. Imma give Derek down in IT a shot, and hopefully I'll have a beautiful origin story as well.
Oh, I want to say this before we move on, Jay, because I do feel like this is a good opportunity for us as men. Because if you marry a woman who you know had ambition, you got to be mindful of that, right? If you married a woman who had skills and talents and maybe she decided to put those to the side, you got to be at least mindful of that. If she's, put them aside and held you down, you got to be mindful at some point in time, maybe you should nurture her expression in some way, because I just kind of feel like that's maybe emotionally intelligent of us to recognize that she did that, because people are going to people. And if you don't do it constructively, if you're not actively engaged in it, it may show up in a way that maybe you're not a fan of. So I just think if you're a guy and you know that woman held you down, just be mindful of that and try to nurture, maybe if it's like a habit or something, side business, something, okay? Because those type of women, it's been 20 plus years and she still got that thing in her. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully she still got that thing in her, Steph, to handle your business, my brother. But anyways, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. I think, if you can be the star player on your team, right? You can be the franchise player on your team, but you still got to run some plays for your wife. You know what I mean? You still got to get her some looks at the basket, some easy points there. You know what I mean? Some playing time.